Hi, thank you for joining me in this episode of GradSWE UCLA presents Women in Science, We Have the Power to Change the World. My name is Yifan Gao, a PhD candidate from Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UCLA. I'm also the International Student Event Officer at GradSWE UCLA. GradSWE stands for the Graduate Student Community of Society of Women Engineers. Our goal is to provide support to graduate students and help them shine in their future career. We are going to host a series of interviews to female scientists, and we hope we can encourage more women to join the community of STEM. Our guest today is Professor Stadler. She's Assistant Professor from Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at Rice University. Her areas of interest are wastewater-based epidemiology, environmental synthetic biology, rate of antibiotic resistance in resource recovery processes, integrated water management, and resource recovery from food waste. If you are interested in her research, please check her website. Hi, Professor Stadler. It's really nice to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. So I was wondering if you could share your research directions and your personal experience to the audience.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So first, I'm Lauren Stadler. I'm an assistant professor of civil environmental engineering at Rice University, which is located in Houston, Texas. I have a few slides just to provide an overview of kind of some of the work that my group does. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. So hopefully you can see, do you see the presenter or you see the full screen?
The full screen, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is a picture of my research group. Have a great group of graduate students, postdocs, some undergrads and research techs who are part of my group. And I have just a few slides that are on my career trajectory. So first, I grew up in Massachusetts. My hometown is a little town called Harvard, Massachusetts. It's not related to Harvard University. I grew up there my whole life and then went to college. I actually went to two different undergraduates. First was Simon's Rock in Western Mass, which was a very small liberal arts school. And then I transferred to Swarthmore College, which is also a small liberal arts school, but I picked it because it was a liberal arts school that had an engineering degree as well. So I got my bachelor's of science in engineering. And then after that, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was very burnt out from undergrad. I got a job in Washington, D.C. as a systems engineer. Most of my undergraduate was actually in focus on electrical engineering. I took a lot of electrical engineering courses, which I know almost nothing about now. And then I went to work for a company called SAIC outside in DC. And then after about a year, I relocated to California and switched to a completely different area. And this was my first foray into environmental engineering. So I worked for a startup company called GO2 Water, also called Oswald Engineering Associates. It was a small startup that designed algae-based wastewater treatment systems. And this really kind of piqued my interest in wastewater and the idea of using kind of alternative wastewater processes that are more sustainable than conventional activated sludge systems for wastewater treatment and resource recovery. Building off of this, I applied for a Fulbright grant, and I got awarded a Fulbright research grant to go to India. And so I lived in New Delhi for a little bit less than a year, where I studied and isolated algae from wastewater streams and tested their ability to remove nutrients from wastewater. And from that, I was like, okay, I like research. I think I'm going to try this out. I applied for the PhD program. I went to University of Michigan, did my master's and PhD there. I did not think I wanted to go into academia when I started the PhD program, but by the end of it, I was like, this, I think, is the right fit for me. So I applied for faculty positions, and that's how I ended up at Rice. So now I'm in Texas. And really broadly, my group works on advancing sustainable and safe urban water systems to protect human environmental health by monitoring and managing its microbial communities. So we study the microbes in our urban water cycle. And our projects really range all different aspects of the water cycle, from systems level studies on integrated water management and water reuse, to studying how resilient our systems are to extreme wet weather, to understanding the dissemination of antibiotic resistant genes and bacteria in the environment and within our wastewater systems. A huge part of my group is now working on wastewater-based epidemiology. And then another big piece of my group is working on how do we engineer wastewater microbiomes to improve efficiency and advance resource recovery processes. This is my last slide. It's just that we work at many different scales, from really fundamental microbiology, where we try and engineer microbes, to running batch reactors, bench reactors, where we try to put these into more representative systems. My group actually is running some pilots right now where we collaborate with utilities and companies to run certain technologies at scale. And then we do a huge amount of field sampling, where we collect samples from all around Houston and study them and quantify disease targets in them for public health purposes. And that's all I have, so I'll stop the slides.
Thank you so much for the nice talk to the audience. I think basically everyone knows your amazing personal experience and also research area in your lab. So Professor Stadler and we met at AESP, a conference, and I listened to one of her reports, the presentations about COVID COVID, I think monitor in the wastewater system. And it was such amazing talk. So I think the term is wastewater epidemiology you just introduced. I think after 3 years of pandemic, I think we all know how powerful a tiny virus can be in terms of affecting our daily lives. But I feel the virus in the wastewater seems to be a little bit far away from what we know about the virus transformation. How come the virus enters the wastewater, and why it is really important to study this topic?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So it turns out when you become infected with many different pathogens, not just SARS-CoV-2, you excrete some of those viral particles in your feces and sometimes in your urine as well. And you also kind of have things that end up in the wastewater system that are not from, going to the bathroom, like when you blow your nose or you cough, and that actually can end up in the wastewater when you take a shower or just through using the sinks, washing your hands and things like that. And so we can look at the wastewater because it's basically a wastewater sample represents the entire population of people that contributed to that wastewater sample. And we can get a measure of kind of community level infections. And we can really track changes in the concentration of, in this case, it's SARS-CoV-2, over time to see if infections are increasing or they're decreasing, and where we are in terms of surges across the pandemic. And I think the pandemic has really revealed the power of it, because so many places have stood up wastewater monitoring programs, not just across the US, but across the entire world. And we've shown the power of using wastewater to basically track community infection dynamics, identify new variants in communities, identify outbreaks in buildings or facilities before clinical testing indicated them. And this was all around one virus, but it turns out lots of things are excreted that can tell you about health, whether that be other pathogens, but also even just nutrition and drug use, because we take certain pills and we excrete a large fraction of those in our urine. And so you can actually look at wastewater to tell you all sorts of things about community health and behavior.
So it can actually give a prediction before the actual outbreak, in the building or in the community?
It certainly can. A lot of it really depends on the quality of the clinical data. Clinical data mean individual testing data. But for example, asymptomatic individuals also shed virus. And an asymptomatic person is not going to go get tested unless they're being forced to, right? But there's, in only very, very specific settings have they ever been able to really implement required testing for all people, whether you're symptomatic or asymptomatic.
That's true.
Nowadays, nobody's even really getting tested at all. Everyone's doing home testing. So it can predict basically outbreaks before clinical testing would in the case of asymptomatic infections, or just in places where people are not really inclined to go get tested anymore,
yeah.
which is basically everyone now.
Yeah.
Like
I
no
don't
one's
think,
really getting tested. Yeah, and no one's
yeah,
reporting their testing results.
it's
Like,
not mandatory at all. So
and if you get COVID, you take a home test, right?
yeah,
And a
so
home
the
test, you're
data,
not
yeah,
reporting the results. Yeah.
yeah. So the data won't be in the system, like in the whole database, but the wastewater data can actually show if there's like a lot of people in the community got infected by COVID or even other pathogens. Also like
Exactly.
antibiotics, I guess.
Antibiotic. Yep.
Yeah. It's like it can give like a comprehensive database to all the community, not just limited to virus, but also like other, I would say like pharmaceutical compounds or other contaminants.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the magic of it too is that it's not a opt-in system. It's by default you're participating just by going to the bathroom. There's no behavior change required by people, and there's no way to go from like a community wastewater sample, collected at a wastewater treatment plant to the individual that's infected. So if applied at scale, there's there's no privacy issues unless you start to monitor very specific populations. In which case, you're kind of at the line of why do wastewater monitoring at all? Like
so it won't review the privacy, like it won't hurt like people's daily life, but it's like basically get the data like from everyone, but it can show. Exactly. It doesn't need to show like individuals like specifically. Yeah. So I like look at your research area, I can feel like it's also really related to engineering. So it's not just about science. So you're studying like epidemiology, those are like really science, but also like really engineering. So I'm not sure if it's related to your industry background, because you just talk about after your undergrads, you enter the industry. So I feel like it might be really important to many audience who are thinking about like between industry or graduate school. So I believe your experience helped them a lot. Would you like to share like why you just said, oh, you're tired of undergrad, so you went to the industry, but do you have any stories behind it, or do you have any advice to our audience?
Yeah, I feel like for me, it just took a little while for me to figure out what I really liked to do and what I enjoyed doing. And when I was an undergrad, where I was more in electrical engineering, I don't think it was really the best fit for me. And it took me a little while to realize that. And I don't think if I had gone, for example, straight from undergrad to grad school in the area that I was focused in undergrad, that I would be in academia. I think for me, I needed to step back, get some work experience to both see kind of the applied, nature of
applied science,
the work. Yeah, but also to understand like the advantages and disadvantages of working for different types of companies. So like the first company I worked for was a massive like beltway, company that did a lot of projects for the DoD and federal contracts. And I felt a little bit lost there in that I was part of these big projects, but I was obviously just as my first real job out of college. I didn't have very much control over how I spent my time or what I worked on. And then so from there, I went to this very small company, tiny startup. It was basically me and the guy who started the company,
the founder.
We were the only two full-time employees, and we worked in one room together on desks side by side. And then there were a couple of other part-time folks who kind of helped with different projects, but it was the complete opposite, where I was thrown into it. I had to do everything, because we were only really two real employees. I had to learn engineering, I had to learn the science behind like the processes. I had to learn how to draw CAD drawings. I had to learn how to interact with wastewater treatment plant operators. I had to run a pilot system in Central California. I had to like do payroll and payroll taxes. I literally did like everything because there was no one else to do it. And I feel like that showed me, wow, I do like, running my own shop, or like in like being able to run it. But it was extremely stressful because in the end we were a company. Yeah, and we had to make money. And we had
Yeah.
clients who depended on our services to actually treat real wastewater. So I felt
Yeah.
very stressed out and over my head because I had never done that work before.
Yeah.
But I did like kind of the small business aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then I really always wanted to do a little bit more of the research because I felt like I
Mhm.
didn't have the background when I started that job in
Yeah.
environmental engineering. And so that's why I applied for the Fulbright. And then that's where I realized I liked, the research side of it. And then going to
Yeah.
grad school just really solidified that. I love the freedom that academia affords you, the freedom of one, how you control your own time, but two, like the projects that you work on.
Yeah.
As a PI, I get to kind of write proposals about areas that are super exciting to me and forge collaborations with people who allow me to move into new spaces and learn new areas. And that has been very rewarding and very enjoyable for me. And I really like the freedom, the intellectual freedom that
That's true.
academia.
Yeah. That's how academia attract me as well. And also like your small company business experience, like stressful, but also your stressful experience, but also because some people say like being a PI is like running a small business, like you are the manager, you are the founder of the small company, like the startup. So it's basically giving you like a whole experience. It can be moved into your like building the
Yeah,
research
it
lab
probably did prepare me well for being a
yeah.
PI.
Yeah, it's like
As a PI, you have to do all these things that you weren't really trained on when you started,
like
writing grants,
yes.
managing people,
Oh
doing
yeah,
the research, teaching classes, I mean, it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see like why right now you're doing such amazing work, but also like running a really big lab. So the industry experience sometimes it will prepare you for like understanding what's like the real applied engineering, like applied science, but also like giving you like the experience and the confidence to run like a small like a lab, like a small startup. Yeah. So it's like yeah.
Wait, is that a question or a comment? Because I agree
A
with you.
comments. It's a comments.
Okay, good. I
Yeah,
agree with you.
because I
I
know
100%
like
agree with you.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
you
I
just
feel like,
yeah.
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I feel
Go
like
ahead. Yeah.
so much of I feel like in environmental engineering specifically, we're kind of in this unique field where we can do projects that range from like extremely applied to extremely fundamental. And I feel like other fields are, of course, this exists in other fields, but I feel like one of the great things about engineering is like you care about solutions, right?
Yeah.
So even the fundamental science that you're working on has to translate into something that's a solution to a problem.
Yeah. So like the industry experience basically like show you what's the real solution looks like, right? Yeah.
And the hurdles, right? From going from fundamental
like
science to real application.
real applied applications. Yeah. So like in your not just your industrial experience, but also like right now the academia experience. I know you have a wide collaboration with like research center and also like Houston public health department and public works, and your leadership among this like benefits both scientific research but also public health policies, because you are also studying like COVID-19, like the studies about it. So I was wondering, would you like to share some stories about us, like with us, like how you reached today's achievement on like all the collaborations? Because like building up the collaborations and networking is also really important for like PhD student to translate to like a full scholar.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I've been really lucky in that I've had a really amazing collaborators who've allowed me to move into new spaces and elevate the impact of the work that I do. And I think, as an environmental engineer, again, I'm really focused on the system and the problem, and I really pull from other people's expertise in terms of methods and tools, and think about how can I bring those to my space to advance or answer a question or a challenge that exists. And I'm also someone who personally like works better in collaboration than individually. Like I think team science for many people is much more productive and a much more happy way of doing science. And so I really leaned into that. I 100% don't think I'm an expert in everything. And so usually if I care about a problem and I think, oh, this would benefit from the expertise of, a statistician or public health or a synthetic biologist, I team up with the experts in the field and bring them, and think about how do we work with them instead of thinking I have to learn it all by myself and do it by myself. Because one, I don't have the bandwidth, and two, I wouldn't be as good at it as working with someone who is truly the leader in the field. And I think I've been lucky at Rice, and that Rice is a place that is very easy to collaborate. Lots of people, there's barriers to working across departments are very, very low, if non-existent. And then I really leaned into my Houston collaborations as well, like building relationships with the health department, building relationships with utility, with industry. Again, because I want to work on stuff that has impact and is applied.
Yeah. So the collaboration is building up a team that like different team members will have different expertise at different fields. And then like all the skill set building together will like have a solution. Yeah.
And it's really about people. It's really about
people,
the relationships. At the base, it's like you have to like your collaborators.
Yeah.
They have to like you. You have to work well together. And, you have to be able to like sit through many meetings where you're talking in different languages. And
yeah, that's true.
Them.
I have been like sitting into like different meetings a lot, even as a PhD student. So I know like building up a collaboration is pretty hard, but once it's like team up, it will be transferred to like a really great work, like a team science. Yeah.
Like our wastewater epidemiology project, it's really started out because I was like fishing around to try and get wastewater samples from treatment plants, and Lauren Hopkins, who is at the health department here, found out, I forget how, that I was doing this work, and we had actually worked together or collaborated in the past post Harvey to do some environmental sampling. So she knew me and she trusted me, and then we worked together instead of independently, and we scaled it really rapidly. And it really was because we had this existing relationship that things were able to like get going really quickly.
Rolling up. So it's like the wastewater sampling, like networking will benefit your research to be like a really big projects and like to have really.
And you don't know that when you're building these relationships, but it's really important to like have these relationships or invest in them so that they're in place when things like fall into place.
You don't know like when it will benefit you, like the race. So I have like a following questions for my organization because I'm in the Society of Women Engineers. So as a female scientist, I was wondering what challenges have you met in the way that, you just share your experience. It's like really diverse and that you make these big decisions like transfer industry, startups and academia, go study abroad, go to India, and then go back to be like a professor.
Yeah. So what challenges? I think maybe the one of the biggest one that's really not unique to me, but definitely I have experience in it. It's just that like my career, exponential phase where I'm starting up my new lab also coincides with when I started having kids. And so balancing my family life with, I have 3 young children. I've had 3 kids pre-tenure, and so I have, a 4, 3, and 1-year-old, and then also starting up my lab have been like directly overlapping with each other. And in some ways it's actually been amazing and great because it allowed me to have balance. Like I have very busy with my family, but also very busy with my work, but I can't let either of them like fully 100% take over my life because I'm trying to, I have to balance the two.
Yeah, you tell me the story, like to set up the working time is really important. Like in the conference, you told me like when is the working time, and then like after that you were like fully devoted into family.
Exactly, because I can't, when I go home at night, like I can't work and make my kids dinner and put them to bed, And so I'm very much like when I'm at work, I'm really focused and really try to be really productive. And then when I'm at home, I try and be present. And I think those boundaries are good. I think they're important. I think if you don't set those boundaries for yourself, whether or not you have a, family at home, you can sometimes get like in a space where you're always working and you can burn out, and that's not healthy either. So everybody's got to find that balance, and the family has helped me find the balance.
Like it's really easy to get overwhelmed with like working, but now setting out the boundaries is basically working every time. Like there's a email, take like just write it, reply it, and then it's like going. Yeah, totally understand. Yeah. So another question will be, do you have any female role model that you look up to in the way that you are pursuing your career?
Yeah, so I feel like I've always kind of gravitated towards female mentors. I was really lucky in my undergrad. I actually think one of the reasons I was an electrical focused undergrad is because the one female faculty in engineering was that was a woman, was an electrical engineer. And then certainly in my PhD advisor, Nancy Love, she was such a good mentor, still is. She is so good at mentoring the whole person, you know, not just research, but also, you know, how do I mentor someone to be a leader? How do I mentor someone to be a good advisor? How do I mentor someone to have balance in work and in life? And she was really she really cared about all of her students in a way that was beyond just, you know, are you going to be a good researcher? And so she's really helped me think about how I want to be a mentor to my students as well. And then of course, like other female faculty and colleagues and friends, and of course my mom as well. My mom was also like, you know, a working mother, and kind of showed me that it's possible to like have the balance, and it's okay to be busy. It's actually, you know, it sets a good example for your kids.
Yeah. So the PhD advisor is always like a role model for us. Like my PhD advisor, Professor Mahendra, she fight the cancer. She's really amazing woman, hardworking, and she is also like mentoring us like a whole person. It's not just about research, but also like our personal life, like how to like build up to be like a professor or like a leader, and also like so
how
you're
to be
also
a good person. How to be strong and sticks your neck out for other people. Like I really feel that about, you know, your advisor and my advisor. Like they really go the extra mile to advocate, you know, not just support their students, but actually advocate for them so that they're able to achieve their career goals. And
that's true. It's really important for like the professor to like promote their students to the career.
Your advisor is really great at that.
So you're also a role model to your students. So my last question is, do you have any advice that you would like to give any like women that are currently or thinking about pursuing STEM fields?
I think that's a hard question. I think my advice, this is going to be like a circular answer, is to find good mentors, find great colleagues, you know, invest in your friendships from graduate school, because they're going to be your friends and potential collaborators for the rest of your life. And they're going to be your sounding board for the hard questions, the parts where you're feeling unmotivated, when you're not sure what to do, when you're navigating, let's say you go into academia, you're navigating a whole new job and a whole new set of responsibilities. And I've really leaned on my friends from graduate school, who are some of my best friends today, to like help me get started, to feel like I'm not alone and overwhelmed. And, you know, my mentors have played a similar role. And so I feel like it's really important to surround yourself with support network such that you have access to advice and support when you need it at multiple levels, right? Not just professionally, but also personally.
To find the best friend, invest like the relationship in grad school that will benefit in the future career.
I always tell my students in my class, I'm like, look around you. These people are your future colleagues, your future collaborators, your future friends. So get to know them. Like this is just the beginning.
I like this advice. It's really important for us to like sort of like start building the network like in the graduate school, not just like, you know, start a career. There's no hard boundaries on that, and the time you devoted into that will actually like reward you like probably in the future.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the amazing talk and all the advice, sharing a lot of suggestions to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
No problem. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Women in Science. We have the power to change the world. Please hit the subscribe button and follow us to hear more stories from female scientists.